Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you for the remarks, and thank you very much for having us. I'm Woody Campbell. I'm chairman of the board of the James Beard Foundation, and on behalf of the foundation, I'd like to welcome all of you here today. Would everyone who was at the very first session of this event at NYU, I think it was 3 years ago, raise their hands? Well, there we go, a hearty few. And that actually reflects the growth of this conference. And when I first came on this board over 6 years ago, this moment was a dream of mine, an opportunity to tackle some of the major issues that our country and our society face in terms of food quality, nutrition, sustainability, and so on. This year we've grown to over 125 people. We'll be together for 2 days, 3 if you count what happened yesterday, the discovery tours throughout this wonderful eating city, New York, and the Hudson Valley, which is our agricultural breadbasket. I'd like to especially again thank our co-host, Good Housekeeping, where Rosemary and her amazing team have been instrumental in bringing this event together. Do take the tour, and let's encourage them to light up a baby blanket or something to do those things that they are actually very good at. And of course, we have other generous partners who we need and actually want to thank. We're grateful for the financial and programming support of our founding partners, the Grace Communications Foundation, Edens and Advent, and Sodexo. We have a new leadership partner, the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. Welcome aboard. We have innovator partners, Karp Resources and the American Humane Association. And we have sustaining partners, Agree, the Sustainable Food Labs, and of course, UBS. There will be an event in 2012. It will be hopefully even larger and more comprehensive. So take notes as you're here. Think about who you would like to have here, who you haven't seen, who should attend, what ideas for program, what ideas for speakers. If you let us know these things, there'll be a questionnaire at the end of the event. We take them very seriously, and we'll hope to incorporate your thoughts in the next session. And now, please join me in welcoming 2 people who've been working for months, and I can actually say years, on, and who many of you know, and in fact, they pulled all of this together. It's the James Beard Foundation's Vice President, Mitchell Davis, and his partner in crime, Karen Karp, President of Karp Resources.
Thank you, Woody, and thank you all for being here. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
We thought we'd take just a couple of minutes to explain how we got here, and really the bigger question, which has been asked many times, and that's why has the James Beard Foundation asked you here today? And that's not about what you're going to do here, because you're going to spend the next couple of days figuring that out, and Joseph McIntyre, whom you'll meet momentarily, our facilitator, will help that happen. But why is the Beard Foundation doing this at all, I think is the question some people have asked, and it's very easy for us to answer. This is James Beard. Yeah, it's amazing how many people don't know who he was. I just came from the debut of a play about him in Indianapolis at the Indianapolis Repertory Theater that's going on this month, story of his life. He's a man who loved food. He was born in Portland in 1903. He came to New York in the late 30s and unable to make a career on the stage, as many people in food have a similar history. He started to write and think about food in really fundamental ways. And he thought about food from the perspective of someone who predated 1906 and the Food and Drug Act, but grew up in Portland, Oregon, in a place where there was a vibrant food community, immigrants, growers, farmers. His mother ran a boarding house. He was surrounded by an incredible richness of food. And then he watched things change. And throughout his life, he wrote about how things changed, how the food system. There's a great letter that he wrote to a friend of his in California, a cookbook writer named Helen Evans Brown in 1952. He'd just come back from the food show in New York, and the letter was like, my God, you should see what they're selling and what people are eating. Thoughts he had that I have when I leave a restaurant show today. Of course, there's amazing things there too. But he really was a person with a vision he may not even have known he had, but as we go back, as we move forward, has proven to be really prescient and something that we all find inspiration in. So he died in 1985, and shortly thereafter, 1986, some friends of his, some former students and colleagues got together and raised some money to buy the Beard House, the James Beard House, which will be celebrating its 25th anniversary in a couple of weeks, beginning November 5th and going throughout the year. And at the Beard House, for the last 25 years, we used to say our unofficial mission was to shine a spotlight on chefs, to give due to the people who were creating the amazing food that some people were enjoying, not everybody, admittedly, but to help shine a spotlight on those who were in the food industry, to help elevate their role and perhaps even elevate the role of food to what we used to say the form of a cultural art, or a cultural art form. So Wolfgang Puck in 1987 cooked the first dinner at the Beard House. He was some young hot chef from California. 25 people came. We thought this was a good thing. And the next month we invited Peter Kamp, the founder, invited someone else. Move forward and we have almost 230 events a year at the house. Chefs from somewhere in America or somewhere in the world come as a showcase for American food, literally around the table. A little bit after that, 1991, we started the James Beard Awards. That's Maria Hines in the corner, you see, who won an award for Best Chef Northwest several years ago. The date escapes me right now. And the awards really took that idea of a spotlight and blew it up. Suddenly, there were people on the covers of magazines. There were people on TV shows with medals around their neck, and people started to pay attention in a very different way. And in fact, one of the things that happened was that the spotlight that we had was small in comparison to many of the people in this room, because the role of the chef, the celebrity of the chef, just exploded. You can't, these days, and we'll hear a lot about this, you can't pick up a magazine. You can't ride a cab on this morning. Some of the people who will be here in the next 2 days were in my cab with me. You can't do anything without seeing chefs. So instead of focusing that spotlight on those folks, we put our heads together, as Woody said, with his dream, and thought now was the time to take all of these people we'd given a great platform to and actually give them a voice in some of the larger conversations about food, not just about the cooking in restaurants, but all of the things that we all know, the issues we know intimately well. That is, wholesomeness of food, nutrition, food safety, sustainability, access to food, fair labor practices, all the sorts of things that now as celebrities chefs have a voice in, but actually don't always have a platform to use it. And with Karen's help, with Woody's guidance, with the guidance of Susan Aguero, our president, who you'll see, and many of the people in this room, we started to formulate this idea of bringing people together for this annual conference. That bringing together is not an accident. That's the thing that we do, because you'll notice you're sitting at tables. You'll notice at the Beard House, there's always a table. And this idea of James Beard, who, I love this picture because it just looks like he's really paying attention and a very serious guy, but also a lot of fun, led us to this idea of convening this national dialogue on sustainability and food.
Great. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we mean by the power of convening and the national dialogue. As Woody mentioned, there are a few of us who were here together. It was, I think, 2 years ago in November at NYU, having the first casual conversation among a group of close, intimate friends to James Beard Foundation. What do we want to talk about food? What is it that we have to say, or what is it that we need to hear? And so we had that meeting a couple of years ago, and we decided, okay, there's enough to say and there's enough to hear, and we need to go and hear more. And we decided, as part of the sort of process or methodology of pulling together an annual conference, that we would take the show on the road literally before we would put the conference together. And so we designed what we call regional salons, which is where Mitchell and I pick a restaurant, usually a James Beard Award winner or a nominee, in a city, in a place that has import and or not. I mean, just any city around the country that is designated and relates to the region that it's in. And we don't plan these very long in advance. We give everybody about 2 weeks notice, and we say, we're coming. Who can you pull together? And we end up pulling 15 or 20 people together from all sectors of the industry: farmers, activists, chefs, restaurateurs, food writers, agrarians, you name it, they show up. The power of the brand of James Beard is that people show up and they want to be around the table. And we have had, I guess we started last year with Portland, Oregon, the home of James Beard. Then we went to Portland, Maine, Long Island, and Kansas City. We got a great representation of what's going on in those places, what are the regional nuances happening with food and politics and policy and health in these places. This year, we went to Atlanta, Minneapolis, Louisville, and we had our a salon right here in New York City 2 weeks ago, I think. And so, as you can see, we're just starting to touch the different corners of the country. There are many corners of the country left to touch, and people want us to come, and we want to go. And so the power of convening begins at a table at these small salons, and we use the things that we hear about what is going on in the regions, in those places, in those restaurant systems, in those food systems that we think can come into the annual topic, which this year is media and money. So why media and money?
It's a good question. Well, one of the things that we kept hearing as we were going around, another reason for the introduction in this way of these regional salons was there are so many of you in this room and many more outside this room working on these issues already. And we were trying to figure out what was the unique thing that the Beard Foundation and the people who are our constituents could bring to the table, literally and figuratively. And as we traveled around, one of the things that we had seen from the power of our awards, from the ways that we operate here in the center of New York City, which is a center of money and media, not coincidentally, and also a center of food, is that we saw different ways that these meta topics that aren't about production, aren't about distribution, aren't specifically about who gets what food where, how, why, how much, and what quality, but actually things that supersede that and set the framework for all of those to happen. Those are namely media and what role media plays in the messages that we all get, both specifically from advertisers, from editorial, but also just what are the cultural images that are pervasive in our society regarding food. And then on top of it, money, that provides this infrastructure on which all of these things sit. We'll talk a lot about money and the difficulty of talking about money, especially standing here atop, it's no coincidence that we're atop a giant, beautiful tower built by a media empire in the center of New York City. But just Sunday, I don't know if any of you saw this article in the New York Times, but there was an article about the production of television commercials about food, and specifically the people who shoot donuts through the air and photograph them in slow motion going through waves of sugar or falling sugar, or the people who cause a squirt of lemon to look like it's just exploded. And I thought the image of the production of one scene of one commercial that can cost upwards of $160,000 spent in one day to get the right shots for a particularly large food company. And I would point out also that spending on food advertising, according to this article, has increased $300 million this year in the midst of a recession because people have seen the value of getting those messages out to people to come eat in your restaurants, that I thought, what a better setting than Sunday's New York Times to come together and talk about all of these important issues of money, media, how they intersect, how they are different, and how we can find the levers, which is really the point here, where we can interject our own values, which is part of the process of being here together, to really facilitate some significant change.
So our agenda today.
Yes.
So as much as I tried several times over the course of the last 5 months to say, can we just do one of those topics? One is really enough for a year. Mitchell said, no, we got to do both. And what we've learned from working with both is that they are very iterative, and you will see that over the course of the day today. Money, media, food, they're very iterative. And what we realize is actually we're talking about, this is not a conference about agriculture production. This is not a conference about producing food in a restaurant kitchen or in an institutional food service kitchen. This is really a conference about the social systems that are underlying everything that happens with food, from production to distribution to consumption and beyond. And so these two very big social systems of money and media made us really think we have a huge opportunity with this conference to go outside of ourselves, outside of our comfort zone, outside of the people that we do business with every day, and between all of us, we do business with a lot of different people every day. So we're going to be today, over the course of the agenda, taking these topics of media and money from a direct practitioner's perspective. How do we do our job in producing a magazine or producing a website or producing a news show? But also, what are some of the systems going on outside of what we get to think about every day? What are some of the global economic policies that are making the world work, that trickle down and eventually impact food and eventually actually happens pretty quickly? What are some of the big top topics and systems in media that we don't really have a lot of ability to touch or feel every day if we're not working directly in it? And so some of the speakers today have absolutely nothing to do with food, except they will by the time they're finished with us today. And we thought that that was really important to go outside of our world to gain a broader perspective. As part of our theories and our ideas about convening people, not convening people only that know each other and know each other's topics, but having new perspectives. It's a very unique experience. And one of the things we've definitely learned in meeting with chefs at the salons and at our conferences over the last 2 years is chefs and restaurateurs work really, really hard. And we know that. We've worked in restaurants. It's a 16-hour day. It's an 18-hour day. You don't get a lot of opportunities to come out and learn stuff or have great ways of understanding systemic pressures on the world that eventually trickle down into your system. So we acknowledge that, and we are offering this opportunity and the salons as a way to engage chefs in their environment and invite them out, restaurateurs, et cetera. And as Woody said, we're going to be even bigger next year, but we don't know what that looks like yet, and I'd rather not think about it until tomorrow afternoon. But one of the things specifically, Mitchell will talk about our objectives for today, is that we really have an opportunity here to learn from each other and to allow new ideas to come into our framework and share those ideas with each other as a beginning of a platform for change.
And I'm just going to lay out how, in thinking of the agenda, the two major pieces of the objectives of the next couple of days, as we see them and as they pertain to the topics that are at hand. They are to create a common understanding among all of you here, some of whom have been at our regional salon, some have been at our previous meetings, how the complex web of media messages and the infrastructure, the financial infrastructure of the food system shape our food choices and our eating behaviors. That's a huge objective, but you can't start anything big without small steps, and so we're going to have a conversation about that today. And I'll reiterate that our point is to identify the leverage points where we can shift the structure, where we can change where the money comes in or how the money comes in, where we can try to alter the messages that come out to try to change behaviors so that in the end we can promote new choices, we can promote any of the unique things that each of you has as your own personal vision or your organizational objectives within the context of these two very powerful forces. That's all we have to do in the next couple of days. As part of the thinking, since we're here in a media building with incredible technology and with access to some great images and videos and things, throughout the day we have some different pieces of media to share with you. And there'll be some interstitial video clips that we're just going to show. You have them listed on the program, what the specifics are if you're interested in them more, in finding more out about them. They're not totally random, but in some ways we just chose them to be completely different. Some of them are made by large companies, some of them are made by nonprofit organizations, some of them are made by people just making videos at home. We'll start with the first one. There'll be many more, and there'll be other opportunities to introduce different forms of media in the conversation. So with that, we'll...
Have a great day.
Yeah, have a great day.